Hello, I'm Heather Gregg and I have the little tagline, all the arts, all the time. Recently I visited the open studios for the Creative Exchange Artist Studios at Portview. Now you may remember that I visited that location for the Ulster Watercolour Society exhibition, and I just fell in love with the building and I just took time taking photographs of the walls and the views and the windows and I just got kind of caught up in that. So this was me coming back, any excuse, to see the artists and see what the studios were like. So when I walked in the doors downstairs, I was just absolutely blown away by a particular large painting. Really interested in it, and I in due course got to actually speak to the person who painted it and got to chat with her over it. I was welcomed in by Paul van Reid. I saw his work, and in particular that he's interested in the Wreck of the Medusa, a particular painting which is in the Louvre. So I asked him had he been to see it, and he said yes. And I said, did he have an alibi for the morning that the jewellery thief break-in occurred in the Louvre? But he did. He was in a studio that day. So I enjoyed having conversation with him and seeing his work, and also the smaller pieces that he had got, and hearing more of what he's engaged in, and that he's going to find an exhibition in the Arts Centre. Something to look out for. Cara O'Donnell Delaney, actually saw her work. She was out of the studio, but behind she's got all these different wires that were in sculptures and outlines, and it's quite interesting. This happened with a couple of the artists. I walked in, they weren't there at that very moment in the studios, and you got just to see how they worked, how the brushes were laid out, how they approached the work, their environment, and it's just a wonderful thing to see. It's utterly engaging, and definitely for anybody who is interested in making art themselves, it's an eye-opener. It's an education in itself. Catherine St Angelo was also not in her studio at the time, so I got to see her large canvases with her colourful sort of almost like blurry images. They're not distinct, but I did a wee video walk through her studio, and you could see that she is interested in painting about the environment, because you could see the green plants at the window and see her painting palette set up ready to go. I had a great conversation with Bernie McAdam, and we were talking about how she works often from mythic tales, things like Persephone and Icarus, and in this particular painting she's standing in front of a painting thinking about Icarus, about the father Daedalus and his feelings towards his son, how you want the children to grow up well and you hope for the best. I love her palette, and she works really carefully to keep her gestures fluid and flowing, and she had got drawings also up on the wall which were showing her initial work and how she was working hard to keep those lines flowing. So Bernie's going to be exhibiting in the Arts Centre, and the opening launch is on Thursday the 13th of November, so I'm hoping to try and be there. She'll be giving an artist talk at 6:30, and the launch is then from 7 to 9 on the same night in the Sunburst Gallery. Great type for the exhibition. I hear the footfall of the flower spring, a quote from Sappho. Next, Katrina Darcy-Smith, and working with wax and paint staining on cloth. I was interested in how this reminded me of Helen Frankenthaler and how she would stain canvases that had not been prepped so they would absorb the colours beautifully. And Katrina did a lot of lovely work with white wax. And she showed me photographs where she had several of her hangings, one after the other, and you can kind of see through, and the light shining through, just utterly transformative, gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And then the wax shapes seen hanging in a tall hanging en masse made me think of being like a ballet, almost like from standing way back and you were looking at these little white tutus, moving gracefully. Her next show is going to be in Milan. What a wonderful line. But it's true. Ray Duncan, not in the studio, abstract painter, loved the setup, loved that feeling he had just walked out. His work tools were there to hand. There's plenty of evidence of work on the walls. Paloma King, turned out to be the painter who had made the picture that just caught my imagination from the moment I walked in. So I got to stand in front of it and talk with her, and she let me take a photograph. And these painters and artists are so generous because they let me take a photograph after some conversation. They trusted me, which was wonderful. I didn't record what they said, although I was just thinking what they're explaining is so fabulous. But I think as somebody who's just walked into their studio space, it's completely inappropriate for me to say, stop, let me video it, let me record it. You don't know me, I'm a complete stranger, I want to video you. So I'm trying to convey much more interesting things. And if you get speaking to the artists and visiting the studios, you will also see the richness of what they speak about. So Paloma had lovely thoughts behind this painting, that they're feminine shape. The painting is named after her grandmother, and it's considering that generation. So generous. When she went to visit her grandmother, she was always ladling out bowls of soup. So there's that repeated soup, or bowl rather, but also the shape of women tends to be kind of breasts and hips and so forth, tends to be quite rounded as well. And it's like giving that generosity, the woman of that particular age. So Paloma's going to be taking part in a 2-person exhibition in 2026, which I look forward to. And I loved her palette, that it's those kind of mineral colours and neutrals. And she also put in a pop of cinnamon, just as that little sort of flavour note as well. Jude Fenton, I got to speak to as well. She works on linen. She was delicately pulling threads from the end to disfray a piece whenever I was there. She had hangings, which she let me take a photograph of her alongside, and she lit them from beneath beautifully, so they display really well. She recommends Portview Christmas Market, which apparently takes place just a few days before Christmas Day, so I'm looking forward to that. Stephanie Noble I got to see as well. She was painting, and at first her paintings look like photographs, but then when you look sideways you can see the texture in them. And she let me take a photograph of her in front of a picture which is so fresh that the paint is actually still drying on it. Her exhibition is going to be in March 2026, together with the ceramicist Patrick Calhoun, whose work tends to be graphic, kind of like little small helmets, very primary colours. And it's all about prescription drugs, how difficult they are to get off them. And I think that's going to be an amazing, astonishing combination, even their different practices. So I look forward to that. Upstairs there's emerging exchange artists, and they were there funded through Belfast City Council via the Artist Studios organisational grant, and they got to have recently graduated and were getting their own studios, shared studios, and 6 of them: Isabel Duffy, Nicola Irvine, Emma Quin, Emma Mulholland, Kitty McFadden and Emer Campbell. Just the way things fell out, I got talking to the 2 Emmas, which was a really engaging conversation. So I enjoyed speaking to these emerging artists, and they were really enthusiastic about being part of these studios, the Creative Exchange Artist Studios. Speaking to the more established artists, they were also just volunteering that they loved the energy and enthusiasm of these new recent graduates, and that it was great for them in their ongoing practice. I like to visit artists' studios because it's a rare insight into an artist's working life and their brain and their thoughts. If there's anyone you know who is studying art or thinking of it, this is essential for them. Please encourage them to visit artist open studios and get the sense of what the working is like, how it's laid out and how you go through the work. I find it's a great chance to have excellent conversations about art, to speak to the maker, whereas when you see the artwork finished and hanging in a gallery, you can't get speaking to the artist to say, why did you do that, or what's that story? And that is always helpful to have that exchange. Plus it's one of the best, I find one of the best conversations I have would be with an artist, especially if their artwork is right beside them. So good. I find all the artists welcoming, happy to chat, and I always learn so much. And I just want to say, if anybody is feeling a bit concerned or scared about going into a gallery, nobody is expecting you to walk through and buy a painting for £10,000. Sometimes you can feel that way, maybe about auctions. Oh, what if I cough at the wrong moment or raise my hand? And No, do not worry about that. For visiting these studios, it's the beginning of starting to know an artist. And if people get to know each other really, really well, you like a person's art, then you may have conversations about purchasing work, but it's not expected from the moment you cross the threshold. And something is to say that it inspires your own creativity. You're probably going to come away and want to take more photographs or paint or whatever it is that you do, because you'll be just surrounded by that environment. Comes with you that encouragement. So totally recommend going to open studios, and definitely if you get the chance to go and see the Exchange Creative Artist Studios, and also their sister studios down at QSS as well, Queen Street. So that's my report for this week.